Hello, everyone, and welcome to Miss Hope's Reading Hour. Welcome. So today is Friday. Yay, it's Friday. So glad to be here with you all. As you've noticed today, it's been a very rainy Friday. Very rainy Friday. So today we're going to read about some kittens. I noticed I had a lot of books about kitties. So I was like, why not curl up if you have a kitten? Unfortunately, I don't have one anymore. I used to have one named Chocolate, which is the reason why we're reading one of the books that we are reading today. And excuse my voice. Miss Hope has a little bit of problems with allergies, so my throat is a little scratchy, okay? So today, we will be reading 3 books that have cats in them, kitties. One of them about a chocolate cat. A chocolate cat? Let's see what that's about. And one of the books is a pretty popular series, and you will see when we start talking about what books we are reading today. So before we get started, just to let you know, this wonderful music that you're hearing and these wonderful books that we will be reading, Miss Hope does not own any rights to any of the books or the music, but they are here for your listening enjoyment, okay? So we have made it through another week of virtual learning. Made it through another week. It's getting easier and easier. At least I see that it's getting easier and easier with my class. Hopefully it's getting easier and easier for your classes too. It can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes, but we are learning to get past those challenges and to persevere, okay? In my school, that is our word for the month, perseverance. Even when there's challenges, we learn how to get past them and get through them. So we are all persevering in this virtual learning world. Hopefully your week has been great. And I just thought about this, if anyone has had a birthday in September, happy birthday to all of you. I have many friends who have birthdays in September. My sister cousin, call her sister cousin because she's more sister than cousin. She had birthday in September. So happy birthday to all of the September birthday peoples. Happy birthday. So let us get to our books that we are reading today. If you saw the teaser, I'm so sorry for putting the teaser up late. I apologize. But if you saw the teaser, you know that today may be a 4-book day. Now, it has always been a challenge to get through 4 books, 3 books, and our chapter book in one day. It's been a little bit of a challenge, but we rise to challenges and we persevere. Every time we've had a 4-book day, we have gotten through all 4 books in time. Can we do it today? I think we can. Okay, now let us go through the books. Well, let me move our chapter book out of the way. Okay. So one of our books, like I said before, I had a cat named Chocolate when I was little. And he had ran away, but then he came back, and then he ran away again. But I did like Chocolate. He wasn't always nice to me. I don't know why, but I did like having a cat. And then when my nephew got his first cat, guess what they named him? They named him Chocolate. So This is the first story we're going to read today. It is called, oops, sorry for the shine, Chocolate Cat. Look at all those sweet treats around that cat. Maybe we're going to talk about some of those. Chocolate Cat. This book is by Sue Stainton, illustrated by Ann Mortimer. Chocolate Cat. We'll see what this story is about. Also, our other book is called Like, Likes, Like. And this is a cute book. This is one of my donation books. It's a very cute book. Like it a lot. You see the two cute little kitties. Like, Likes, Like. And this book is by Chris Rashka. Like, Likes, Like. In our last book, which I'm hoping we get to it, I remember reading with my class this series of books. And the first one I read was Pete the Cat in his school shoes. And it came with a CD because there's a song that goes with the book. And I was like, oh, this is so cute. I love these books. So since we are reading today, why not talk about how Pete the Cat checks out the library? He's had his school shoes. He's been in fire trucks. Why not check out how Pete the Cat checks out the library? This book is by James Dean. Pete the Cat checks out the library. Last but certainly not least, we will continue our Walking with Miss Millie by Tamara Bundy. So I've really started to like this book. We're learning more about Miss Millie. We're learning more about the time in which this book was written. Well, in the story. The book was written a little later than the time in the story, but we're learning more about that too. Okay? And we're learning more about Alice and her family. So we'll continue with Walking with Miss Millie. Now let us get to the books. We got a 4-book day, people. We got to get through all of these books, okay? All right. Excuse me for having to clear my throat. I thought I had some water. I guess I don't. We will persevere, okay? So our first book is Like, Likes, Like by Chris Rashka. Okay. This is a DK Publishing book. Two by two, he and she, curly and straight, fancy and plain, different and same. Go. Oh, they're all gone. Looks sad to be alone. Unlike the rest, unlucky, alone. Oh, rows and rows of roses. I like roses. I like flowers. I like taking pictures of flowers too. He sees flowers and flyers. Oh, look at that. Those flowers look like they could be butterflies, right? A breeze, trees, high, wide skies. Grass and moss, round mounds. Heaps of stones. He's traveling everywhere by himself. Look, in luck. Looks like. Like, likes, like. Oh, how lucky. You found a friend. Not alone now. Two together. In rows and rows of roses. The end. Oh, what a sweet story. Sometimes it feels kind of bad not to be able to find a friend. But when you find someone who's just like you, and they may not look just like you, but they may like the same things that you like. And so, likes, like. Oh, such a good book. Now let us get to The Chocolate Cat. This book is by Sue Stainton, illustrated by Ann Mortimer. This is a Catherine Teagan book, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers. And by the way, Miss Hope likes chocolate. She likes it a lot. Chocolate is like my favorite candy. Even though it messes with my stomach, I still kind of eat it because I really like it. All right, The Chocolate Cat. The old chocolate maker lived alone with Cat. From a small shop in a small gray village nestled between the sea and the mountains, he made chocolate like his father and his grandfather before him. The village was famous for not very much. It was a drab little place. Cat would watch the window lazily with one eye open, twitch his whiskers, and wait for the shop bell to clang. But people never seemed to stop for long. The paint was peeling around the window of the chocolate shop. Inside, the shelves were lined with dusty jars of all shapes and sizes. There were sacks of cocoa beans, some old chocolate-making machinery, and even an old chocolate fountain that hadn't worked in years. Everything seemed dreary and miserable. But then, so was the chocolate maker. Nothing made him smile. He had forgotten how, so people left him alone. Every day, more chocolate just piled up in the dusty window. And people didn't like his cat much. Too lazy to catch mice, they said. Cat didn't like the people much either. Oh man. People didn't come by for chocolate? I can't imagine it. One day, for no particular reason, the chocolate maker made something different. Suddenly, there were chocolate mice with crunchy pink sugar tails everywhere. The chocolate maker piled the mice high, but couldn't be bothered to even taste one. But Cat was interested, and he thought he saw one move. Suddenly, the pile of pink sugar-tailed mice tumbled down right in front of Cat's nose. Cat's nose twitched. Wasn't he supposed to catch mice? He gingerly batted and bit a pink sugar tail. Then Cat tried the chocolate. He could not believe the taste. It made his whiskers and paws happy. Then he had an idea. Everyone should taste this chocolate. Just once. Cat had a plan. Cat took the first mouse to the greengrocer's and hid behind the cherries. Mr. Green picked up the pink sugar tail and took a bite. The taste made him think, what a wonderful idea. He ran down to the chocolate shop. The chocolate maker was grumpy, but in the end, they experimented late into the night. Cherries and apricot pieces were soaked in raspberry syrup and covered in the creamiest chocolate, leaving a whole succulent cherry in the middle. They called them cherry bombs. Wait a minute! And soon there were glazed fruits of every kind. Mangoes, oranges, pears dipped in rich, dark chocolate, each even more wonderful than the last, all displayed in the shop window. The chocolate maker didn't smile, but Cat twitched his nose again. Those mice were special. Time for another. Oh man, now it's making me want some chocolate. The next mouse went to the baker. Cat hid amidst the breads and watched. Mr. Crumb ate his chocolate mouse and chuckled. What a brilliant idea! Within minutes, he had clanged the bell of the chocolate shop. And by morning, the windowsill was full of scrumptious stripes. The tiniest, gooeyest cakes striped with thick melted chocolate, topped with white chocolate lace. And soon there were cakes piled high with every combination of chocolates and fruits. The aroma of baking reached every corner of the village. It made people dream of chocolate, but it didn't make the chocolate maker smile. The cat's nose twitched again. Perhaps there was magic in those mice. Time for another. Look at all those treats. They look delicious. They'd be nice with some tea on a rainy day like today. The next mouse went to the delicatessen. Cat hid among the spices. Miss Hazel ate her chocolate mouse, then skipped to the chocolate shop singing, "What an amazing idea!" By morning, the window was full of chocolate slabs so large you had to break them with a hammer, piled high with nuts and honey and exotic spices. And soon there was scented Turkish delight in every shade of pink and green and jugs of thick, steamy, hot chocolate. It was enough to make your mouth water just by looking. But none of it made the chocolate maker smile. Cat licked his lips. There was definitely magic in those mice. Time for another. The next mouse went to the flower shop. Cat hid behind the roses. Miss Bloomer ate her chocolate mouse and giggled, "What a beautiful idea!" She left trails of flower petals all the way to the chocolate shop. As soon there were chocolates with real crystallized violets and primroses and rose petal jellies with real rose petals. The scents were extraordinary. And now outside the shop were baskets of violets with lemon-scented geraniums and pink roses. All the colors and scents made the chocolate maker's head spin, but they did not make him smile. The aroma made Cat dizzy. He thought he saw chocolate mice everywhere. Time for another. The next mouse went to the hardware store. Cat hid behind the saucepans. Mr. Steele ate his mouse and laughed. "What a fantastic idea!" He clattered and clanged down to the chocolate shop. Soon there were chocolate stars and moons. From tin molds they made chocolate fish, rabbits, and hens. The chocolate fountain was repaired. Chairs and tables were set outside among the flowers, and people came and sipped hot chocolate. Then the chocolate shop was painted, but still, the chocolate maker didn't smile. Cat couldn't believe his eyes. What next? What will make him smile? Let's find out. Nice magic mice. Magic mice, nice, Cat sang. Can you believe that? The cat's now singing because of the chocolate? That's some special chocolate. The children started coming by and suggesting ideas. The chocolate maker was inspired. He made fat, twirly aliens with green jelly middles, puffy pink pigs, and honeycomb fireworks that would sparkle in your mouth. Then there were chocolate pebbles that would last forever, and apricot clouds that would melt on your tongue. Now everyone was talking to the chocolate maker, and he was talking to everyone else. But he still didn't smile, not once. Sipping hot chocolate seemed to make the people relax, gossip, and watch the world go by. They even talked to Cat. Cat could not believe his ears. He even began to quite like everyone. Even Cat is coming around. But what about that chocolate maker? The chocolate maker would gaze at all his creations proudly for hours. Then one day, he saw a chocolate mouse move. He caught the mouse by the tail and suddenly couldn't resist the taste. The taste traveled all the way from his head to his toes to his fingers. And then, of course, He had an idea, a wonderful, brilliant, amazing, beautiful kind of idea. Cat hid behind the pile of mice, considering his cleverness. He waited. The chocolate maker started working, and he worked for a long time. I wonder what he made. Let's see. The chocolate maker seemed to come alive as the chocolate maker worked. Almost magically, the chocolate, dark and white, turned into wondrous sculptures. He told Cat stories about them. Cat watched, listened, and wondered what would come alive next. Then, quite suddenly, the chocolate maker smiled, and he laughed until his toes twiddled. The more he laughed, the more the chocolate became whatever the chocolate maker imagined. Ferocious fiery dragons, sailing ships, turreted castles. They were all much too big and too wonderful to eat. Cat smiled too, at last. Look at all of those chocolate creations. There's people who make stuff like that, you know. And now the village was famous. A faint aroma of chocolate and spices hung in the air. It made people dream of chocolate. And people came from far and wide to see the chocolate maker work. But the sculptures hidden deep inside the chocolate shop were always a surprise. And in the window, made from the darkest chocolate, was a magnificent sculpture of Cat, smiling. Every now and then, Cat is still giving a chocolate mouse, but not very often because, as you know, you should never eat too much of scrumptious things because they lose their magic. The end. Oh man, that was such a good story. I can't imagine how chocolate could make anybody smile. It makes me smile all the time. Okay? Oh, it's such a good story. And the chocolate cat was the hero because he helped everyone remember the wondrous things about chocolate. And it brought alive their imaginations. Such a good story. All right, to our third book. Can we make it? I think we can. Pete the Cat Checks Out the Library by James Dean. This is a Harper Festival book. Pete's mom is taking him to the library for the first time. The librarian gives Pete his very own library card. Cool, says Pete. The librarian smiles. Time for the tour. The librarian takes Pete through the library. There is a big desk where people wait to check out books. Pete sees some of his friends reading at a long table. It's very peaceful and quiet. How relaxing. The librarian takes Pete to her favorite room. There are lots of Pete-sized chairs and tables and shelves. There are books of every shape, size, and color. What do I do now? Pete asks. Now you read a book, the librarian says. Which book should I read? Asks Pete. You can read any book you like, says the librarian. Pete looks around. There are so many books. That is my problem in the library, Pete. There's so many books, I don't know which one to start with. Pete picks up a book about airplanes and jets. He reads it and pretends he is a stunt pilot. He flies a super fast jet and does loop-the-loops and spirals high in the sky. Pete finds a book with dragons, wizards, and unicorns on the cover. He reads it and imagines he is a powerful wizard, using magic spells and a special wand to defend his castle against a fire-breathing dragon. Next, Pete opens up a book about spiders and insects. He reads it and imagines that he is a scientist studying all types of critters in the wild. So, you see this picture here? That's the book. And my parent friends, when you buy this book, a whole thing of stickers. Look at that. Pretty cool. Kids love stickers. Kids of all ages love stickers. Because even my older kid friends, you bring out stickers, they have them everywhere. Back to the story. He has to be very still to study some critters, and very fast to study others. Some critters move fast, and some critters move slow. I'm not much of a critter fan myself. Then Pete chooses a book with all sorts of scary monsters on the cover. It is a book of fairy tales. Pete reads it and pretends he is in a dark, spooky forest trying to outsmart a big, bad wolf. Pete puts that book back on the shelf. It is too scary. Pete opens up a book about the pyramids in Egypt. He reads it and pretends he is an explorer riding a camel across the desert and climbing to the top of a giant pyramid. Whew, that is some climbing because they look huge. Next, Pete picks a book with all sorts of robots on the cover. He reads it and imagines he is a robot at a robot dance party. His arms and legs make whizzing sounds when he moves. When Robot Pete speaks, he says, bleep, bloop, bleep. Excuse me. Next, Pete picks up a book about superheroes. He reads it and makes believe that he is a superhero. He flies around the city in a colorful cape, chasing bad guys and saving the day. Then Pete spots a big book about the ocean and its creatures. He reads it and imagines that he is a scientist in a submarine deep in the Atlantic Ocean, looking for whales and squids and sharks. There are so many wonderful books to read at the library. Pete can be whatever he imagines with a book. Reading is super groovy. The end. Isn't that the best part about books? You can imagine you are anywhere doing anything. And you can imagine that you can be any of those things that you read about. That's why books are awesome. So now, let us get to our chapter book, Walking with Miss Millie. Find out some more about Miss Millie and about Alice. And when we ended the story, we were about to find out how Miss Millie's brother was working to make things better where they lived in Rainbow. So let's find out about what happened when her brother was trying to make a difference for, I believe, African Americans in Rainbow, Georgia. All right, let's see where we ended. Okay, there we go. All right. She continued to walk, and I continued to get more and more curious about what I was pretty near old enough for, until she finally started the story. I was born and raised in Atlanta, a little west of here. She smiled, but I picked a rough time to come into the world. Now I was remembering my history books. Were you a slave? Were you ever a slave? Miss Millie looked shocked. Land sakes, Alice girl, how old do you think I am? I'm not over 100 yet. She laughed and coughed a bit before continuing. My mama was born a slave, but slavery was ended when she was a young woman. Of course, then she was free, but with no education, no job, and by then no parents. Hard times for my sweet mama. Miss Millie's voice trailed off as she reached her house. She bent down to take off Clarence's leash, but even with it off, he stood by her feet, like he wanted to hear the story too. Miss Millie waved her hand in front of her face like a fan. How did I get off on this tangent about my life history? Hoo-wee! Must be boring you to tears. I'm going to sit a spell over there by the picnic table. You go on ahead and go if you want. She walked to the table and took a long time to sit down, like she was lowering herself one bone at a time. I followed right behind Clarence, who was following right behind her, and seated myself across from her at the table. So can you please tell me what happened to your mama and your brother? She took a deep breath, like the oxygen she was breathing in might help trigger her memory to come out better. But something told me she could live to be 150 and never would be able to forget what she was saying. By the time Mama met Daddy, things were tough all over. They were stuck in the South, and the South wasn't too happy to have them stuck here. Daddy picked up jobs working on plantations, trying to get the money to head north. Soon I joined the family, and when I turned 8, my brother came along. She looked at Clarence and then back at me. My brother, name was James. Well, James was smart. He even got himself into college. Yes, sirree, he was smart, but angry. He saw the differences for us folks in education. Jobs, everything. Back then, if a white person didn't like the way a black person looked at him, he could shoot him and no questions asked. I gasped. Then those words hit me. Miss Millie looked back at me and nodded. Hard to believe, isn't it? James thought so too. The year was 1906. when him and his friends decided to take a stand and fight for justice. The Atlanta riot is what they called it, but I just call it sad. She breathed a deep breath. Papers said over 25 blacks were killed during that time. But those of us closer know it was more like 100. But however you count it, my one and only brother was killed. As she stated the statistic, she bent down to pick up Clarence like she needed a hug or something. I felt like giving her a hug too. But just as I started to scoot closer to Miss Millie, I saw Eddie hop in the fence. For once, he didn't have his plate. From where he stood, he signed, "Mama want you come home and help with Grandma now." Right then, I didn't want to go. I had just dug deep in Miss Millie's memory and stirred up something painful. To up and leave while the pain I forced to leak out was still so raw seemed downright wrong. I signed back to Eddie as I said out loud, "Tell Mama I can help with Grandma in a few minutes." But he shook his head with his pointer fingers. He shook his head as his pointer fingers ran down his cheeks, telling me my mama was crying. I couldn't be any more torn two ways if he grabbed me on one side and Miss Millie and Clarence grabbed me on the other and both started pulling as hard as they could. I looked back at Miss Millie, who smiled like she understood sign language all of a sudden. "Guess you gotta go." She reached into her shirt pocket and pulled out what I thought was another marble. But when she stretched her hand across the picnic table to put it in my hand, I saw it was a rock. "Here you go, Alice. Thanks for the walk." The rock was black and shiny with something sparkling through the middle of it. Holding it in my hand, studying it like it just appeared out of nowhere, I probably looked like I was trying to figure out where it came from. And Miss Millie must have guessed my question before it was asked. That and the marble from yesterday, they both belong to James. "It's real pretty," I said. "Looks like a diamond river runs through it." She nodded. James said that their rock reminded him that no matter how dark the world seemed at times, there was still beauty to be found in it. She smiled deeper. "Yes, sirree, he was a smart man, my brother." I think I did a better job that day of thanking her than I did the day before. And I didn't even have to ask about tomorrow's walk. I just knew. Chapter 9. When I got close to Grandma's house, I heard a man's muffled voice coming from inside, and for 1 minute, I thought it was Daddy. I swung open the back door with a thud and almost ran smack dab into the doctor. He was an older man with white hair and whiskers, and he chuckled at me coming to such a quick stop. Mama seemed to know him a lot better than she ever knew our doctor in Columbus. "Now, Joni, you know your mama's gonna have good days and bad days. There's no way of knowing how fast or how slow her memory might decline." The doctor spoke with a thick Southern accent. "And I'm happy to oblige her with a house call. But there is really nothing to do at this point except keep her safe. And of course, pray." Mama wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, making her look almost like a little girl and not like a real mama. "Thanks, Doc. I can always count on you." He smiled, giving her a hug. "Well, since I brought you into this world, the least I can do is help you get through this, don't you think?" Mama grinned at him and then looked at me. Alice, do you remember Dr. Riley? He bent down to eye level with me. Hello, Alice. You have definitely grown since the last time I saw you. You certainly are a lovely young lady. Must take after your mom. I figured the doctor's eyes were getting old. No one says I take after my mama. But when he said that, I smiled, and I might have even blushed. He held his hat in his hands by his chest when he bent down, but moved it toward his head, like he was tipping it to me when he stood back. Now, if you lovely ladies will excuse me, I'll have to go look at a patient. As he left, I saw Eddie standing by the back door watching. Usually, he has lots of questions when people aren't signing around him. Since he just stood there watching, I knew he was worried. Mama knew it too. It's okay, she sighed. Sorry to worry you. Grandma is okay now. Eddie nodded and went back outside. But something told me he didn't believe Mama's words any more than I did. What happened to Grandma? Mama looked toward Grandma's room and then back toward me. She answered in a voice just barely above a whisper. She woke up confused today. Didn't know where Daddy, your grandpa, was. When I reminded her he died 5 years ago, she took the news hard, like she was learning it for the first time. Mama's voice choked. She stared at Grandma's bedroom door, like she was lost for a moment. Then she nodded her head. It's good we're here, Alice. It's so good we're here. She walked over to the window to watch Eddie in the backyard. When Mama first told us we were moving to Georgia at the family meeting back in Columbus, I told her right away I didn't want to move. No, I told her I wasn't going to move, ever. But just when I was working on my best arguments to convince Mama why we shouldn't move, she took my hand in hers, like she was really holding on to me, and said in a voice I could barely hear, "It's the right thing to do. It'll be okay, I promise." Then she lowered her head to rest on our hands, and she lifted her head. I saw tears in her eyes, and that's when I knew we were moving to Rainbow. There were a few things I just can't handle. Broccoli and poison ivy for sure. But worst of all is my mama crying. Up to last year, I was okay with Mama crying. I mean, it's not like I liked it or anything, but it didn't hurt me on the inside. But lately, when Mama's eyes get all misty, my own eyes decide they have to get misty too, and I hate that. And now, standing in Grandma's kitchen with Mama about to cry, I still didn't want to be in Rainbow, but I knew we were probably stuck here. Even more than that, I knew I didn't want my mama to cry. I walked over to her and hugged her around the waist. She bent down and kissed the top of my head. What would I do without you, Alice Ann? Mama sniffed a few times and then seemed to remember where I'd been. How was your walk with the dog? How did your walk with the dog go today? Did he let you walk him? No, he only likes Miss Millie walking him. So we all walked together again today. How was that? The conversation with Miss Millie came back to me, and I said to Mama, did you know that Miss Millie had a mother who was a slave and a brother who was killed for protesting about how bad black people were treated? Mama tilted her head to look at me. Well, it sounds like you two are doing a lot more than walking a dog. Miss Millie has sure been through a lot. She has, I added, like I was an expert on her by now. She gave me this today. I reached in my pocket and showed Mama the rock. This was her brother's, I said. Doesn't it look like there are diamonds running through it? Mama smiled real big. It's beautiful, she said. And then she asked, do you know when her brother was killed? I thought back to our conversation. It was 1906. I was proud of myself for remembering. Mama nodded. So Miss Millie thought this rock was worth holding on to for more than 60 years. But she gave it to you today. That means this rock and you must be pretty special. Not sure if it was the heat, the emotion, or the pride I was feeling right then, but my cheeks burned and my eyes stung as I squeezed the rock tighter. Chapter 10. When I got to Miss Millie's house the next day, she was sitting exactly where I left her at the picnic table, and I started to worry that maybe she was getting Grandma's forgetful disease. But then I saw she had on different clothes from the day before. She still wore a man's button-down shirt, but it was a different color. Miss Millie's hair looked newly braided too. Clarence barked and snorted, but only for a few seconds. Soon he was sniffing at me again, and he must have recognized my smell because he stopped on his own without Miss Millie needing to say hush or anything. I wanted to reach out and pet him, but stopped myself. Even though I wasn't scared of him anymore, I wasn't yet sure of how he felt about me. Everything's okay over at your Grammy's house? Miss Millie asked. I guess I tried to sound happy, but I think she could hear a sad sticking to my voice, like my hair was already sticking to my neck. The day before, I made it through talking to Mama about Grandma, thinking Grandpa had just died without me crying. I made it through hearing the doctor say, there's not a dang thing he can do for Grandma without me crying. And hardest of all, I made it through hearing Mama cry last night when she thought I was asleep without me crying. So when Miss Millie asked me if Grandma was okay, imagine how surprised I was to find my eyes getting all misty. And before you know it, I was telling her everything, and those dang tears were flowing like a fountain. Miss Millie sat there nodding her head as she reached in her shirt pocket and fished out a hanky she pulled out for me so I wouldn't flood her backyard. Every now and then she would say, poor baby. And I wasn't sure if she was talking about Grandma, Mama, or me, but it didn't matter because it made me feel better. I stared at the hanky she gave me, noticing the initials MM and real pretty lace all around. It struck me as something so ladylike for someone wearing a man's shirt to have. Can you keep a secret, Alice girl? Miss Millie asked after my tears decided to stop. I nodded my head quick to tell her I could. Miss Millie looked at the ground like she was embarrassed about something. I kind of figured your Grammy was having a problem when her garden was never watered and the plants started dying. She's always so proud of that garden, and I knew she wouldn't let it die on purpose. So I kind of been watering it from time to time. Right then and there, you could have knocked me over with a feather, because all of a sudden I remembered Grandma saying what she said about Miss Millie being in her yard and thinking she was up to no good, when all this time she was up to good, keeping her garden from withering up and dying. Didn't that beat all? I sat there with my mouth open for all to see, like I was waiting for the words to fall out by themselves. Miss Millie sat there waiting for those words to fall out, with this look on her face that reminded me of what my face must have looked like when I'm waiting on Mama to scold me for something. Finally, my words decided to fall. You mean all this time you've been watering her garden? I'm sorry. Miss Millie looked hurt and a little embarrassed. I probably shouldn't have gone over there, but that's the nicest thing I've ever heard, I interrupted. The nicest thing in the world. Miss Millie smiled then. It started in her eyes and found its way to her wrinkled mouth. But just when the rest of her face was showing an out-and-out smile, she turned it off, like she had an on-off happiness switch inside of her. I could tell, though, she was only pretending to be fed up with the whole conversation because her eyes were still smiling. Oh, fiddlesticks, stop carrying on with such nonsense. No need to nominate me for a Nobel Peace Prize because I kept your Grammy's tulips alive. And no need to tell her what I done. She turned away from me, but not before I figured out she was blushing. Yep, I didn't think it was possible, but Miss Millie was honest to goodness blushing. We will stop right there for today. Guess what, my friends? We made it through a four book day. We read all four of our books, and they were all so great. All had such great lessons to learn. We're learning more about Miss Millie, more about Grammy, more about Alice and her family. Can't wait to find out some more about Miss Millie and her life. It sounds like it has been pretty interesting. So today we read Pete the Cat Checks Out the Library by James Dean, and The Chocolate Cat, trying not to get the shine, The Chocolate Cat by Sue Stainton, illustrated by Ann Mortimer, and Like by Chris Rashka. So my friends, we made it through a 4-book FRI-YAY. Maybe that might be a new thing, 4-book FRI-YAY. We will see. Well, I am so glad I got to be here with you all today, that I got to read with you and share these great books and these great stories. And I hope that you have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of this fabulous FRI-YAY evening. Hopefully you will find another good book of your own and curl up with a blanket and a cute little kitty, if you have one, either real or a stuffed one, okay? Either one is good. Have yourself some hot chocolate. See, I'm thinking about hot chocolate now that they talked about it in The Chocolate Cat. Or some tea, which I probably will have tea because that will do better on my tummy. And have a good weekend. Hope that you enjoy it. Have fun. Be safe. And I will see you next time on our Marvelous Monday, right back here on Miss Hope's Reading Hour. Until